I don't usually talk about this, not because I'm afraid of being called crazy, but because part of me still thinks I brought something back with me. It started with a scream. Not mine, not human. It was just after 5 a.m. when I heard it, high and broken, echoing across the foothills like a siren made of bone. I was alone, deep in a remote stretch of Colorado wilderness known as the Black Hollow Basin, an area tucked behind miles of private ranches and untouched forest. I had only gotten access thanks to a phone call and a favor from a grizzled rancher named Bill Halverson, who allowed me to cut across his land on bike. The deal was simple. No fires, no guns on his property, and no staying overnight. I was only supposed to hunt once I hit the public land beyond his barbed wire fence. So why the hell did it feel like something was hunting me? I brushed off the scream as a mountain lion call, told myself it was the echo messing with my ears. But something in my gut twisted, hard, like a hand was wringing it out from the inside. Still, I had my gear, my mountain bike, and a plan. The night's rain made the air smell like mud and pine, and my tires barely made a sound on the soaked dirt road. I was in motion before dawn broke over the trees. The first few miles were easy, rolling pasture land, cows watching me with those dumb blank eyes like they knew something I didn't. The path eventually split, left into a narrow canyon choked with trees, or right up a steep ridge. My instinct told me to go left. Smoother trail? Maybe better. Game. So I pedaled straight into the canyon, not realizing I had just made the worst decision of my life. The air changed. It sounds insane, but the second my front tire crossed into that canyon, everything shifted. The sky dimmed, even though the sun was climbing. The wind died. The birds stopped chirping. Even the insects were silent. And I felt it. That cold, awful sensation like being watched by something just behind you, breathing slow and heavy. I glanced back more than once, but there was nothing there. Just trees leaning in too close like they were listening. The deeper I rode, the worse it got. The canyon narrowed, shadows thickened, and the trees, mostly aspen, started to bend, unnaturally toward the trail. At one point I stopped to take a picture of this jagged stone formation that jutted out like a blade from the canyon wall. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I looked down and saw the blur on the screen. Then I reached what I later called the throat, a bottleneck between two sheer cliffs, only about 20 feet wide. As I stepped forward, a sudden gust of wind slammed into me, almost throwing me backward off my bike. It didn't feel like weather, it felt deliberate, like something didn't want me there. I forced myself forward, told myself I was just being paranoid, told myself to focus on the hunt, that it was just adrenaline and wilderness jitters. But the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. On the other side of the canyon, I stashed my bike near a dead log and started hiking uphill into the trees. My plan was to scout the ridge lines, maybe spot a mule deer before noon and pack out by sunset. But that presence? That silent pressure in the air? It followed me. Every crack of a twig made my heart thump. Every rustle of leaves sounded like whispers. And somewhere in the back of my mind I started feeling like I wasn't alone out there. Like something was watching me. Waiting. By the time I stopped to rest around midday, frost had started forming on my beard. I was drained, but I didn't want to stay still. I kept glancing downhill toward the trail, toward the throat. Something was wrong down there, terribly wrong. I shoved the feeling down, ate a protein bar, forced myself to think logically. I was miles from anyone. Armed, trained, experienced, and then, on the way back, it happened. Halfway to my bike, I froze. No sound, no movement, but I felt it, like the heat had been sucked out of the world. My stomach knotted so hard I almost puked. My vision blurred. I knew something was behind me. Not an animal, not a man. Something old. Something cold. I dropped to a knee, shouldered my rifle, and spun in a full circle. Nothing. Only trees. Only silence. But I knew. I knew. I wasn't alone anymore. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, like I was sucking it through wet cloth. My hands trembled as I strapped my gear back onto my bike, eyes darting between the trees. The forest had grown too still. Even the cows I'd passed earlier, docile, dumb beasts, were now standing perfectly motionless in the nearby clearing, their eyes fixed on the mouth of the canyon behind me. That's when the dread crystallized. They were watching something, and it wasn't me. I backed up slowly toward them, using the herd like a living buffer. A twisted part of me thought, if something comes out of those woods, maybe the cows go first. That dark logic made me feel sick, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stood there, hands on the handlebars, one finger resting on the rifle's safety, staring into that tight corridor of twisted trees and crooked rock. The calf closest to me chewed slowly, like it didn't know any better. But the others, their eyes were wide, their bodies stiff, their breath coming out in short puffs of steam in the freezing air. Then I heard it again. Crunch. Not a twig, not a leaf. A deliberate footstep, somewhere just inside the tree line. I scanned. Again, nothing. No figure, no movement. Just that sickening sensation of something unseen crouched low, watching me through the trees with patient, intelligent hate. I looked down at my map, desperate for another way out. There was a trail, the one I didn't take that morning. It looped back over the canyon from above, across the ridgeline. Longer, steeper. But if I made it to the summit, I could ride downhill all the way back to the ranch in minutes. I didn't hesitate. I threw my gear on and started, pedaling hard up the slope. Mud sucked at my boots as I pushed the bike through thick, wet earth. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned. The temperature was dropping fast, the sky bruising into a sickly gray. The whole time I didn't dare look back. But then, halfway up the hill, I heard them behind me. The cows. They were following, 6 of them trudging slowly uphill, not grazing, not wandering, following me. Their heads low, their eyes locked on me like they were waiting for something to happen. I tried to laugh. Maybe they were just herd animals, drawn to movement. Maybe I'd become their accidental leader. But then I remembered the carcass. It was up ahead near the tree line, and when I reached it, I nearly collapsed. There, half buried in a shallow bed of pine needles and snowmelt, was the shattered skeleton of a cow. Ribs snapped outward like splinters, spine twisted the wrong way. No sign of predators, no weather damage, just wrong. I stepped back, bile rising in my throat. The cows behind me had stopped, silent, watching. That's when I knew. I wasn't imagining it. Something had killed that cow. And it hadn't eaten it. It had just torn it apart. Suddenly, the forest behind me sighed. A sound like a massive breath being exhaled through thousands of trees. The hairs on my neck stood straight up. I spun around. Nothing. But the dread now had shape, like it was wrapping around my ribs. Squeezing. I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I just moved. My rifle was clutched to my chest now, thumb on the trigger guard, half safety on. I didn't trust my legs anymore. They shook beneath me like I was walking on ice. The climb felt endless, the slope dragging me downward with every step. I was too cold, too tired, too aware of the presence crawling just out of sight behind me. Each time I turned, the cows were still there, silent sentinels. But I couldn't look at them anymore. I was afraid I'd see something else standing, among them, something that didn't belong. When I finally crested the ridgeline, I collapsed into the dirt, panting, my fingers stiff and red. I looked up, and saw a new herd of cattle grazing peacefully at the top. The ones that had followed me merged with them, like nothing had happened, like none of it had been real. But I knew better. Something had followed me through that canyon, and it wasn't finished with me yet. The ride down the mountain was supposed to feel like salvation. It didn't. My tires hissed and slid through the wet dirt like I was gliding over something alive. The air was sharp and icy now, but I couldn't feel it anymore. My nerves were raw, buzzing. Every bump, every rustle of wind through brittle leaves made my stomach lurch like I was being chased. And maybe I was. Because halfway down, I heard it again. Footsteps. Not behind me, not in the trees. Beside me. For a few seconds, God help me, I thought something was running parallel to me through the forest, matching my speed, silent, invisible. I refused to look. If I looked, I knew I'd see it. And if I saw it, it would see me. Not just my face, but who I was, what I feared, what it could use. So I stared dead ahead and pedaled faster. The road blurred, branches whipped past. I hit the flat pasture like a missile, dirt spraying behind me. I didn't stop until I saw the rusted ranch gate appear through the trees. Bill's land, safety. Maybe. I loaded the bike onto my truck in a daze, rifle still strapped to my chest. The cows were gone. The wind had stopped again. It was just quiet. Too quiet. I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the early dusk like blades. The further I got from that canyon, the more I told myself I'd imagined it all. Adrenaline, paranoia, too many solo trips. But I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in the canyon, cold breath on my neck, eyes behind the trees that shattered cow spine pointing at me like a warning. And then the dream came. I was standing at the throat again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. There was a thing standing in the gap, humanoid but wrong. Bone thin, too tall. Its skin was pulled tight over its skull, and it had no mouth. But I heard it speak. Its voice wasn't sound. It was inside me. A pressure, a vibration in my bones. Don't come back. It sounded like me, but it wasn't me. It was older, hungrier, a shadow version, like something that had watched me for hours and learned how to wear my voice like a mask. I woke up drenched in sweat, nails dug into my palms so hard they bled. Deleted the photos I'd taken that day. I burned the map I'd used to find the trail, and I never went back. It's been years now. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd taken that same trail again. If I'd ignored the voice. If I'd pushed deeper into that canyon to find the thing I knew was there. But most nights I lie awake, and I feel it. Like it's waiting. Not in the forest. Not on the trail. But in the back of my mind. In the shadow behind the mirror. In the spaces we pretend aren't real. It didn't stay in the canyon. It followed me home. And sometimes, when the wind dies and the world goes quiet, I still hear it breathing. You ever feel the exact moment the world turns against you? For me, it was the second the forest went silent. No wind, no birds, not even the usual whisper of branches. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding behind my ears, like a war drum. Was about 8 miles into the northern stretch of Shoshone National Forest, Wyoming. Back then, I used to think of solitude as a kind of freedom. I'd head out alone, rifle in hand, chasing elk through the thickest brush I could find. The deeper, the better. No cell service, no roads, no people. I didn't realize I was wrong, until it was almost too late. It was early fall. The trees had already started to shed their color, ashes of orange and red falling like embers across the trail. My boots crunched quietly through the undergrowth. There was fog between the trees, thin but strange, clinging low to the forest floor like smoke that didn't want to rise. It had been an uneventful morning. No tracks, no movement. My hunting partner, Jake Mercer, was supposed to be walking a few ridges over. We had a plan. Stay parallel, half a mile apart. Use signals if anything went wrong. It was a simple system, one we'd used for years. But that day, the forest didn't feel like it was following any rules. Around noon, I crested a small rise and stopped to take a drink. That's when I noticed it, the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the unnatural kind. The kind that feels like something pressing its hand over the mouth of the world. I didn't hear the chipmunks that had been flitting through the brush earlier. No ravens. Not even wind through the pine boughs. Just the emptiness. It hit me like a cold hand on the back of my neck. I scanned the woods, slowly, rifle still slung but ready. Nothing moved. Not even the fog. That's when the smell hit me. Rot fresh. Like something had died nearby. Wet, metallic, wrong. I told myself it was a carcass. Maybe a cougar kill. Maybe a natural death. I followed the scent cautiously, every step, deliberate. The pine needles muffled my boots and my breath sounded too loud in my ears. 10 minutes later, I still hadn't found the source, but the silence had grown somehow, like it was folding in on me. Then I heard it. Crunch. Snap. Thump. Close. Too close. My body turned before my brain even registered the sound. And that's when I saw it. 20 feet away, exploding through the brush like a freight train of fur and rage. A goddamn grizzly. I didn't even have time to unsling my rifle. All I saw was its eyes, black and bottomless, and the way its jaws opened wide enough to crush my skull whole. I threw up my arms and stumbled backward, trying to shield my throat, the only word in my mind being no. It hit me like a truck. I fell hard. I remember the weight, the hot, wet stink of its breath. Its claws raking through my jacket like it was made of paper. I screamed, but the sound barely came out. The bear was snarling, teeth snapping inches from my face, and all I could do was push up with the butt of my rifle, wedged between us like a pathetic shield. In that moment, I saw death, and it looked like madness. I don't remember hitting the ground. I only remember the weight, the crushing, paralyzing weight of something ancient and furious grinding me into the dirt. My arms were locked, shaking, rifle jammed sideways between my chest, and the bear's open mouth. Its teeth snapped inches from my face, foaming with spit and blood. I screamed without sound, my voice buried beneath its roar. Its claws raked down my sides, shredding through my coat, slicing into the flesh beneath. Then, gunshots. Not mine. Crack, crack, crack. The bear reeled. Its weight shifted. One claw caught the edge of my cheek like a razor as it staggered sideways and collapsed with a guttural wet snarl. It twitched once. Then it went still. I laid there, gasping, every inch of me soaked in sweat and blood and piss. My hand still gripped the rifle like it was the only thing keeping me from falling off the face of the earth. A figure ran up the ridge, rifle in hand. Jake. I couldn't see his face clearly through the tears and fog in my vision, but his voice was sharp and panicked. Jesus, Nathan, don't move, you're bleeding. I wanted to say thank you, or you saved my life, or holy shit, there was a bear, but all I managed was a shallow gasp. He knelt next to me, eyes scanning the tree line, rifle raised. He was muttering to himself, like he was arguing with something. I couldn't hear. It was watching you, I saw it, it wasn't just the bear. That sentence cut through the fog in my brain like a blade. What? I choked out. He didn't answer. Just kept his eyes locked on the tree line behind where the grizzly had come from. His voice was trembling. I saw something else. It was, standing right there just beyond the bear. It was tall, pale, no face. Then it was gone. I tried to sit up, but my body screamed in protest. My left arm felt wrong, numb and burning at the same time. "You're in shock," Jake said, finally turning toward me. But I swear to God, I wasn't aiming at the bear at first. I was aiming at that thing. I wanted to believe it was just adrenaline, hallucination. But deep down, I knew better. Because when the bear lunged at me, I had felt something else too, something behind it. A deeper kind of terror. Like I'd been offered up. Like the bear was just the first mouth. A distraction. We managed to bandage my side with gauze from Jake's pack and began the long, agonizing hike out. Every step sent lightning through my ribs. The forest remained dead silent the whole way, unnaturally still, like the land itself was holding its breath. And then, halfway down the ridge, we found it. A second set of tracks. Not the bear's. These were longer, barefoot, deep, uneven, like whatever made them wasn't quite walking, or wasn't meant to walk. They came from the direction the bear had charged, and they led directly toward me. Then they stopped. No turn. No retreat. No sign of where it went. They just ended 10 feet from where I had fallen. Like whatever it was had simply vanished. Or worse, was still there, watching, just beyond the edge of what I was allowed to see. Jake refused to talk the rest of the way down. And me? I couldn't stop shaking. Not from the wounds. From the sense that something else was out there. Something that knew me now. That had touched the edges of my mind. The bear may have been the predator, but something else was the witness. And it wasn't finished with me yet. The doctors said I was lucky. 4 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder, dozens of stitches. No internal bleeding. No permanent nerve damage. They said I'd recover, that I was one of the fortunate ones. But none of them asked about the dreams. None of them saw what Jake and I saw up there in those woods. At first, I chalked the nightmares up to trauma. Standard PTSD. Faces twisted in blood. Claws ripping through bark and bone. But then the dreams changed. They stopped being about the bear. Now I saw trees, towering and wrong, bent like they were leaning to listen. The wind in my dreams didn't sound like wind, it whispered. Not in words, but in intent, like it was curling around my ears to find its way in. And then, always in the final moments before I woke up drenched in sweat, it would appear. A figure. Far too tall. Skin the color of mildew and death. No mouth. No eyes. But somehow, watching. Every time I opened my eyes, I'd swear I could still feel it in the room with me, coiled up in the ceiling corner just outside the light. Waiting. I stopped going near mirrors, not because I feared what I'd see, but because I feared what I wouldn't. The flicker of something behind me, reflected only when I wasn't looking. Jake tried to pretend it hadn't happened. He came by once after the hospital, dropped off some venison and a bottle of bourbon, said it would take the edge off, but he couldn't look me in the eye. When I asked him about what he said in the woods, the thing he saw, he just shook his head, mumbled something about shock and brain chemicals. But I saw the way his hands trembled when he thought I wasn't looking. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. No note, no calls, no signs of struggle at his cabin. Just his rifle still hanging over the door, untouched. The forest took him, or maybe it followed him home too. Now, even months later, I hear it sometimes. In the walls. In the wind. In the dead space between thoughts. The feeling I had when the bear was on top of me. The screaming, primal certainty that I was going to die. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing I wasn't going to die alone. Because something else had come to watch. And it liked what it saw. Now I live far from the forest. I keep the lights on at night. I sleep with my back to the wall. My rifle stays loaded, leaning against the nightstand. But I don't think it matters. You can leave. The woods. But the woods, they don't always let go. If my dog hadn't sensed him first, I think I'd be dead. I was 4 days deep into the Olympic National Forest in Washington, 30 miles from the nearest town, maybe more. Just me, 2 dogs, and a stretch of wilderness that hadn't seen a human footprint in weeks. But something else had been out there. I didn't realize it at first. The days were quiet, the trails desolate, the sky that kind of wet, indifferent gray you get in the Pacific Northwest. I'd hiked through rain, fog, and ankle-deep mud. My legs were sore, but I felt alive. I was camped just above the tree line, where the mountain rolls back into itself and the wind never really stops. I'd found a wide, open meadow ringed with pine and moss-covered rock. Beautiful, isolated, perfect. That night, the sun began bleeding into the horizon. My bigger dog, Diesel, a German shepherd with more instinct than sense, stood dead still, facing the tree line. Not wagging, not whining, just staring. At first I thought it was a deer, or maybe a bear. We'd seen prints the day before. Big cat, probably a cougar. I wasn't too worried. I had bear spray, a knife, and a .40 caliber pistol zipped into my pack. But Diesel wasn't doing his usual bark. He was doing something else. A deep, guttural, rattling growl I'd never heard come out of him before. It vibrated up through his throat like something primal had taken over. He didn't blink. He didn't move, just growled and stared. Straight, up the darkening hill, I called to him. He didn't respond. I snapped my fingers. Nothing. So I walked over, crouched down beside him, and looked in the same direction. At first, I saw nothing. Just trees, fog, shadows creeping between the trunks. Then I felt it, like a static charge humming beneath my skin. A cold pressure pushing at the front of my skull. My heartbeat slowed, thickened, like it had been caught in molasses. The air felt wrong. That's the only word for it. Like the forest had changed while I wasn't looking. I scanned the hillside again, and that's when I saw it. Movement. Just past the boulders. A shape ducking low behind a fallen tree. Too quick. Too controlled. And definitely not an animal. No glowing eyes. No furry silhouette. This was something human. Or at least it used to be. I stood up, instinct kicking in, and Diesel moved with me, still locked onto the same exact point. My smaller dog, Finn, was whining from inside the tent behind us, pawing at the zipper like he wanted out. Or maybe away. I started up the ridge, slow and careful, pretending to check on my bear bag. The slope was steep and I had to use my hands to climb, grabbing onto wet bark and slippery rocks. That's when the smell hit me. It wasn't rot. It wasn't animal. It was something wrong. Like wet stone mixed with old iron. Like breathing in someone else's blood. I kept moving, pulse hammering in my throat. Each time I looked over my shoulder, Diesel was still watching from below, head low, ears flat. Then I heard the branches break, fast, about 50 feet ahead. Something running through the trees. I froze. Listened. Nothing. No footsteps. No panting. No sounds of someone crashing away. Just silence. That choking, heavy silence again. Then Diesel's bark ripped through the air. Feral. Loud, violent. And when I turned to look back down the ridge, that's when I saw it. There was a man crouched just beyond the tree line. He wasn't wearing hiker's gear, not even hunting camo. He was covered in rags, layers of filthy, earth-colored fabric draped over him like a dying scarecrow. His face was gray with mud or ash, and even from up on the hill I could feel it. He wasn't looking at me. He was through me. His eyes were wide, unblinking, like he hadn't seen another person in years, or worse, like he had, and he'd done something terrible to them. I couldn't move. The man, if that's what he was, just stayed crouched there, motionless. His limbs were all wrong. Bent but loose, like a puppet that didn't understand gravity. His head twitched once sharply as if he was trying to listen without ears, and still, he didn't blink. I blinked. I looked away for half a second to call Diesel back, and when I looked again, he was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. My stomach dropped like I'd just stepped off a cliff. I scrambled down the hill, half running, half sliding on wet dirt and loose stone. Diesel met me halfway, still growling, pressing, his body against mine like he was trying to push me back down, like he knew it wasn't over. Back at the tent, I zipped both dogs inside, hands shaking so badly I nearly ripped the nylon. I fumbled for my pistol and headlamp. My fingers were so sweaty I almost dropped the magazine while loading it. I sat, outside in the freezing dusk, back against a cold rock staring up the ridge. I kept the light off. I didn't want to see anything else unless I had to. The forest was black now, and silent again. The kind of silence that hurts. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. The only sound was Finn whining inside the tent. Diesel never made a sound after we got back. He just watched the ridge with his ears pinned flat and his teeth bared. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not heavy ones, not like boots. Soft, deliberate. Coming down the hill. Not fast. Not clumsy. Like whoever it was had done this before. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped behind a boulder not 20 feet away. And then, whispering. Not words. Just breath. Like someone was standing just behind that rock, exhaling through their teeth. Slowly. Loud enough for me to hear it on purpose. That's what made it worse. They wanted me to hear it. I stood up with the pistol raised, heart smashing against my ribs. "You're not supposed to be out here," I said. My voice sounded wrong, small, weak. It didn't even echo. Nothing answered me, so I did the only thing that made sense. I fired a warning shot, one sharp crack into the air. The gunshot rolled through the trees like thunder. And nothing. No scrambling, no shouting, no footsteps running off, just that horrible silence again. I stood there for another 30 minutes, maybe longer, until I couldn't feel my fingers, until my legs shook not from fear, but exhaustion. I climbed back into the tent, zipped it shut and sat with my back to the door, pistol in hand, barrel aimed toward the flap. Diesel curled up next to me. Finn laid his head on my lap, eyes wide open. Neither of them slept, and neither did I. Because the whispering didn't stop. Not all night. It came and went, drifting between the trees like smoke. Sometimes closer, sometimes far, but always there. Always, breathing. I kept my hand on the pistol and my eyes on the flap, but part of me knew, if that thing wanted to come inside, I wouldn't even hear it unzip the tent. The sky never really got dark that night. Not completely. A thin sliver of moonlight hung just enough to cast shadows. Moving shadows. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. Neither did the dogs. Diesel never looked away from the tent flap. His muscles stayed tight, coiled like springs. Finn trembled against my leg the entire time. By 5 a.m., the whispering had stopped. But it didn't feel gone. It felt hidden. I waited until the first hint of sun lit the edge of the horizon, that dull gray glow crawling over the mountains. Then I packed up, fast, sloppy, didn't care. I shoved everything into the bag like I was defusing a bomb. The entire time, I never stood up straight. I kept low, exposed only what I had to. The woods didn't feel like woods anymore. They felt like walls. Like something was watching from inside the trees behind every trunk, just waiting for me to look away. As we hiked back down the mountain, Diesel kept looking over his shoulder. I didn't ask him why. A few miles from the main trail, we came across a small campsite. Someone else had been out here. Their tent was flattened, torn, not slashed, but peeled, like it had been opened carefully from the top down, layer by layer. There were no supplies inside, no gear, no bag, no footprints, leaving. Just one deep indentation in the dirt, where someone had sat, for hours, or been made to sit. My stomach turned. I reached for my phone thinking to document it, maybe send it to a ranger later, but my phone was dead. Not out of battery. Dead. It had been at 60% the night before. When I pressed the power button, the screen flickered once, then went black, as if something had drained it. I didn't wait. We kept moving. By the time we reached the trailhead, the sun was fully up. I should have felt relief, safety. Civilization was only an hour's drive away, but the woods still pressed against my back, and I swear to God, as I turned to look one last time before getting into the truck, I saw him, standing half-shrouded in trees, motionless, watching and smiling. That's when I understood something I'd been too scared to admit the night before. He hadn't followed me. I had invaded, and he had let me leave. That's what terrified me the most, because if he let me leave once, he could come find me again. It's been months. I sleep with the lights on. Diesel sleeps facing the front door. Finn won't go near trees anymore. He won't even piss near a park. I haven't camped since. But the worst part? It's not over. Because 3 days ago I found something tucked beneath my back porch. A strip of cloth. Dirty. Torn. The same earth-colored rags that man had been wearing. There were no footprints. No motion on my security camera. Just that strip of cloth and the whispers that came back that night. Breathing. Waiting. Smiling. I swear to God, if our car had stalled just 5 minutes earlier, I don't think I'd be here telling you this. It started with a storm. One of those wicked, bone-rattling tempests that roll across the high desert like a wave of bad intentions. My best friend Mark and I had driven deep into the Arizona backcountry to scout a hiking trail locals called Dead Hollow. Yeah, ominous name, but we were stubborn and curious types. Stupidly curious in hindsight. We didn't see a single soul the entire day. Just wind, dust, and the distant growl of thunder. The road was barely a road. More like two pale scars on the earth that cut through a forest of ancient, twisted pines. We were miles from anything. No signal, no houses. Just that thick, pressing silence you only find in God-forsaken places. By the time the rain started, we were already heading back to the car. The sky had turned this sickly greenish-black, and the trees were groaning under the weight of the wind. We practically ran the last half-mile, shoes soaked, laughing nervously to each other like it was all just another wild camping trip. But something felt wrong. That kind of wrong that sticks in your teeth, that buzzes behind your ears like a mosquito you can't swat. When we finally reached the car, we climbed inside, dripping wet, blasting the heater. The windshield wipers struggled to push aside the sheets of rain. For a second, I felt relief like we had beat the storm. But then, headlights. Faint at first, then stronger. A pair of old halogens piercing through the rain and fog. A pickup, truck, beat to hell. Rust along the wheel wells. No license plate. It rolled up slow and stopped directly in front of us, nearly blocking the only way out. No other cars for miles. No reason anyone should have followed us out this far. The driver's door creaked open and out stepped a man, or at least something shaped like one. He was tall, maybe 6'5", with a thick frame, and wore a flannel shirt that looked soaked through and stuck to his skin like it had grown there. His hair was long and greasy, matted to the side of his face. But what got me, what chilled me to the core, was his expression. He didn't look angry or threatening. He just stared, blank, hollow, like he was looking through us. He stepped around the front of his truck, slow, deliberate, never breaking eye contact with us. Something in my brain screamed, "Move," I whispered to Mark. "Start the car. Now." The keys were already in the ignition, engine still warm. Mark didn't hesitate. As he shifted into reverse, the man reached behind his seat and pulled out a rifle. That was it. That was the moment I knew we were going to die in that forest. The barrel glinted in the dim gray light, rain streaming off it like blood. He didn't raise it, not yet. But he didn't need to. The threat was in the way he cradled it. Like it was familiar. Like he'd done this before. We reversed so fast. The tires skidded on the wet gravel. The man took a single step forward and pointed the rifle at us. Not to the sky. Not a warning shot. Right at us. I ducked, yelling at Mark to go, go, go. He hit the gas, and the car jerked onto the muddy track, fishtailing wildly. I thought I heard something behind us. A snap, maybe a shot. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. My heart was thundering so loud in my chest I thought it would drown everything else out. We drove, and we didn't stop until we hit asphalt an hour later, but the terror didn't stop there. That night when we got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it over and over. The stare, the storm, the rifle. The complete silence in the forest, like even the birds had known to leave. But the part that shook me the most happened the next morning. When Mark tried to start the car, it wouldn't turn over. The starter was dead. Just like that. And I couldn't stop thinking, what if that had happened out there? In that exact moment. What if the storm had hit 20 minutes later? What if the man wasn't alone? Because in that second, when he stepped out with that rifle and stared through the windshield with those empty, expressionless eyes, I saw something I'll never forget. I saw hunger, and it wasn't for food. I didn't tell anyone, not at first. What the hell was I supposed to say? That some backwoods giant with a dead face and a rifle hunted us down in a storm? That we got away by inches, and that our car, the same car, died the next morning without explanation? It all sounded like something out of a bad horror film. But I couldn't let it go. That day I barely spoke to Mark. I didn't eat. I just sat on my porch staring out at nothing, chewing the inside of my cheek until it bled. I kept glancing at the tree line. Every shadow looked like a figure. Every gust of wind felt like breath on the back of my neck. At night, I started locking all the doors and windows. Twice, 3 times. Mark texted me around midnight. "Bro, you asleep?" I replied. "No, can't." He said he kept hearing something outside his apartment, like gravel shifting. Said his motion light kept flickering. Said he could have sworn he saw a figure near the dumpster behind his complex just standing there. "You think it's him?" he wrote. I didn't answer, because I did. I did think it was him. But it wasn't just him anymore. It was the feeling, that presence in that bottomless hollow dread, like someone had peeled open my skull and poured darkness inside. It stayed with me, even when I tried to convince myself we were safe. Even when I stood in front of the mirror and said it out loud, "We got away." But my reflection didn't believe it. That week I stopped sleeping entirely. I kept seeing flashes in the corner of my eyes, a shape watching me from across the street, a silhouette in the hallway. Every time I turned on a light, nothing was there. My mind was breaking, or bending, just enough to let him crawl through. 3. Days after the encounter, I finally worked up the nerve to take the car into a shop. Mechanic took one look and whistled low. "Starter's not just dead," he said. "Looks like someone pulled it loose. Like, intentionally. Not something that just breaks like that." I stared at him. "You saying someone sabotaged it?" He shrugged. "Could have been. You piss anyone off?" I didn't answer. That night, I dreamed of the rifle, not the man, just the gun, floating in the air, spinning slowly, pointing at me, my chest, my head. And the sound, that endless ringing click like the hammer was cocking again and again but never firing. When I woke up, there were muddy footprints on my porch. I live alone. No one had been over. No one should have been over. The prints were long, big, like someone with boots 2 sizes too large had stood right outside my front door. For how long, I don't know. But the rain hadn't come yet, so they were fresh. I checked every lock. Again. 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 The worst part? I didn't call the cops. I didn't even think to call them. Not because I didn't think it was serious, but because some deep animal part of me, some bone-deep primal instinct, knew it wouldn't help. That if I involved anyone else, they'd just vanish too. That whatever we'd crossed paths with didn't want justice, it wanted fear, and I was giving it exactly what it craved. That was the night I realized the truth. We hadn't just stumbled into danger out there in the woods. We had been invited, and now something was watching. Waiting, maybe even already inside. The night it happened, there was no storm, no thunder, no rain, no warning. Just a dead calm so absolute I could hear the hum of my fridge from the other side of the house. The stillness was unnatural, like the world itself was holding its breath. Had just turned off the hallway light when I heard it. 3 soft knocks at the front door, not pounding, not frantic, just measured. Calm, like whoever was out there knew exactly what they were doing. My whole body froze. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. My eyes locked on the door from the shadowed hallway. Another knock, slightly louder. Then, a voice. Not shouting, not calling, just a low rasp, calm and dry like old sandpaper sliding across stone. "I know you're in there." I couldn't speak, I couldn't think. Every hair on my body stood up, my skin crawling with invisible fingers. I felt like a child again, hiding from something under the bed. Except this time it had found me. "I just want to talk." That same slow, deliberate rhythm. "You left too early, we weren't done." I backed away, step by step, toward my bedroom. I kept every light off. I didn't want to give him a silhouette to aim at. I didn't even look out the peephole. I knew it was him. That face, that rifle, that blank expression that wasn't just empty. It was wrong, like it didn't belong to anything human. And then, the doorknob turned. Slowly. I had locked it, deadbolt and all. But still, the knob twisted with that low, creaking resistance like something was testing it. Not forcing it, not breaking it. Just checking. And then it stopped. Silence. Long enough that I thought maybe he had left. Until I heard the whisper. "You brought it back with you." It wasn't just his voice this time. It was like several voices layered together. His, mine, others. Male and female, young and old. Whispering the same phrase in unison. From outside, from the walls, from the inside of my own fucking head. Brought it back with you. I don't remember how I got through that night. I woke up on the floor with my back against the closet door, a kitchen knife clutched in both hands, my shirt soaked through with sweat. There were scratch marks on the inside of the front door. Not deep, not claw-like. Fingernails. Dragged, slow and precise across the wood in 3 vertical lines. Almost artistic. I called Mark. He didn't answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I drove to his apartment. No car in the lot. Lights off. I banged on his door like a madman until the neighbor came out and told me Mark had left 2 days ago. Said he packed his things at 3 a.m. Didn't say where he was going. Just drove off. I haven't seen him since. The police wrote it off as stress. Said he probably needed a break, a reset or whatever. I know better. I felt it. Whatever followed us out of that forest, and it wanted him. Maybe it took him, maybe it's still with him. Maybe he brought it somewhere else now. But I'm still here, and it hasn't left me alone. Some nights I hear the whisper again, seeping through the cracks in the drywall. You left too early. We weren't done. And the worst part? Sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I don't see myself anymore. I see him. That expression. That blank, soulless stare. And I start to wonder, did I ever really make it out of those woods? If you made it this far, you're braver than most. If these stories chilled you even a little, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps me bring you more horror, more darkness, and more truth. Share this video with someone who thinks they're not afraid of the dark. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Join us. There's always another story waiting, and right now, the one playing on your screen might just be the scariest of them all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.